Hello, good morning.
Morning.
What's your name?
My name is Bally Bassi and I go by Bally Bassi.
Okay, and where were you born?
I was born in England.
Okay, and when did you come to Canada and how did you arrive on the decision to come to Canada?
Okay. I came to Canada in 1988 and I came to Canada, I got married to my husband and it was an arranged marriage.
Okay, so basically, what was your status when you came to Canada? You were already you were already married, or you
No.
got married after coming to Canada?
So I came as a visitor and then he sponsored me and I got
Okay,
married. Yeah.
okay, and what was the first city that you entered in Canada? What was your port of entry?
Okay, my port of entry was Vancouver.
Vancouver, and
Yeah.
I believe you took a flight from England to Vancouver, or did you come by sea?
No, I took a flight from from England to Vancouver.
From India to Vancouver. Okay. So, can you tell us about your very first memories when you came to Canada?
Okay.
Like the first few days. How did you feel about it?
Okay, so when I first came to Canada, I was 19 years old. I had never been out of England.
Okay.
I had never been on an aeroplane, and I say airplane instead of airplane.
Yeah.
And so when I first came, Canada to me was very, very big. And I was staying at my sister's house, visiting my sister in Surrey.
In Surrey. Okay.
And what I felt, like honestly, what I felt was I felt like it was a prison setting. It was closed.
Hmm.
Everybody was so busy in their jobs and everything, and it was like, who am I?
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. First of all, I felt very lonely because
Okay.
I knew nothing. I only knew England
Yeah.
and my family in England, and now here I am in Canada, this huge, big country.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
Okay.
Like how was your journey in the very first 5 years?
Yeah. So in the first 5 years, so I mean, coming to Canada, I was coming for an arranged marriage. So I got married to my husband, who is originally from India,
Okay.
and he was traveling from Toronto to Prince George, and we had got married, and I got married into a very large family. Like it was a big family.
Okay.
And growing up in England, we spoke Punjabi and we spoke English.
Okay.
And but as siblings, we all spoke in English to each other.
Hmm.
And here, married into a very traditional family, everyone was speaking Punjabi. And so not only was I in a new country, I was also, it was a new beginning. It's a marriage, it's a new family.
Yeah.
And so I was learning a lot of things. And even though I knew my culture and traditions, the culture and traditions in one Punjabi family are not the same as another Punjabi
Very true.
family.
Very true. It varies.
Yeah, so it was quite scary. It was like, I was young.
Yeah.
And my husband was 26, so he was more mature, but he was a sibling of six. They had six sons and one daughter.
Okay.
And everybody lived in one house.
Yeah.
And
A joint family.
A joint family. And whereas I came from a family of where, well, there was five kids and parents, but one daughter was living outside and the son was living outside as well. So it was a smaller
Yeah.
setting, but yeah. So it was a lot of getting used to. And you said the first 5 years, so
Yeah, like what did you do? How was your?
Yeah. And so first of all, so my husband had come from Toronto, and we were in this large family. He didn't have a job. Like,
Okay.
He didn't have a job. He was living in the family. And
In Surrey?
In Prince George.
Okay, so you moved to Prince George after your wedding?
Yeah. And so
Okay.
what happened was I came to Surrey, and we had got married, and the family had a base in Osoyoos, the Okanagan,
Okay.
where they had a fruit farm.
Okay.
And then they also had a base in Prince George, and then Toronto, where my husband had come from. And so we moved to Prince George. That was where the family home was.
Okay.
And we were staying there. As my husband didn't have a job, it was discussed that we'd go to the farm.
Okay.
So we ended up coming to Prince George. We stayed here, got married in April, stayed from April to December '88. We stayed in Prince George, and he was looking for a job. We were looking for jobs, and it was quite difficult. But there was one organization which is now called, it was a courier company. They had promised a job, and what had happened was then it backfired. He didn't get that job. And at that point, my husband was getting a little stressed and so forth, and decided, let's go to Toronto. And we're thinking, we're a newly married couple. I don't know Toronto. Here we have family support. His family support, my sister. If we go to Toronto, we're going to get lost. So instead, the family suggested Osoyoos, where the fruit farm was.
Hmm.
So we ended up going at Christmas time to the farm,
Okay.
which was in Osoyoos. So we lived in Osoyoos from Christmas to March or April time. And then we headed back to Prince George, and my husband had got a job. And at this point, though, I was pregnant. So now we have another layer into the family
Yeah.
unit is that I was pregnant with our first child. And so it was very difficult. And then I started looking for work,
Okay.
and it was really interesting for me. And I like to share this because this is an experience as an immigrant from England, even though my background's Punjabi.
Hmm.
When I was looking for jobs and so forth, my accent doesn't match my face and my ancestry. So who
Yeah.
am I, right?
Yeah.
Am I Punjabi? Am I British? Am I South Asian? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a British-born Punjabi Sikh woman.
Hmm.
But how do others identify me?
True.
And I would apply for jobs, and I would speak on the phone, and it was all amazing. Everyone was pleasant, receptive, and so forth. And there was one organization I won't name, and they had asked me to come in and drop off my cover letter and resume when I phoned them. And when I went down there, I couldn't get past the reception.
Hmm.
And for me, it was an eye opener because I had grown up in England with racism. Like, we had the National Front, we had a lot of racism growing up.
Yeah.
And Vancouver in Canada was portrayed to me as a diverse country that welcomes diversity and so forth. And for me, having been an educated woman, I was taken back that I couldn't get past the receptionist to give my cover letter and resume.
So
I
was
got-
this, the level of racism, was it the same as in England, more or less? How would
Well,
you describe that at that time?
with that experience, for me, I was astonished. I was taken back. But I mean, racism in England was very, very, growing up and where we lived, it was quite bad. And we grew up with it. And so for me, coming with that baggage, not baggage, but that experience to Canada, and then to have seen this, for me, it was a shock. I mean, I'm not saying it was high, but it was a shock. But I'm not a person who's going to stay quiet either.
Hmm.
And so when I got back, I phoned the company again, and I said, and the gentleman's like, you didn't come down to drop off your cover letter and resume. And I said, I can't get past the receptionist. They said they weren't taking cover letters and resumes. And I said, I think it might have something that my voice doesn't match my skin color. And I just put it out there. I mean, I was a young woman, feisty, and for me, it's the principle. And the gentleman asked me to come back again, and I said, thank you very much. I'm not interested anymore. I mean, because that was my experience, and I'm not going to go back to that. And from years on there, because I am a strong advocate for human rights and women's rights and family rights, etc., I actually use that example in my training workshops I do on integrating diversity and differences. Because for me, a person who feels that I had a little bit of knowledge, and that was my experience, but if you go past from the 5 years to I've been in Canada now 29, 30 years, my experience of diversity and how strong Canada is in embracing diversity is much different than what my first experience in the early 90s was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've talked about work life. You talked about family life. Can you develop something more upon the community life? Like, what did you used to do? What would after work to socialize and to bond within the community?
Okay. Yeah, and so in the earlier on years, because growing and being raised in England, family was first and foremost and very important, and it's on a high pedestal.
True.
And in my family, it was family and education and reputation and respect. Like, those were the key values that were instilled into you from a young age. I mean, my kids growing up would say, how did you feel about an arranged marriage? And I would say, that's the only thing I knew. I had nothing against it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, even to this day, I say I would never want to have, what my parents did for me was they took on that responsibility. I would never want that responsibility for my kids. It's a huge responsibility that our parents took on for
Very
us.
true.
And I appreciate it. But yeah, in this generation, I wouldn't want that responsibility, because if it works or doesn't work, that's falling on me.
Yeah.
And so for me, family was first and foremost and very important. And so when I came to Canada, and even growing up, I always said, I want to get married into a large family where a mother and father-in-law, I'm living with a mother and father-in-law. Because for me, it's like your parents raise you all your life, and when it comes to give back, is that a reality? Do we give back to our parents? So that was first and foremost for me. And so when I came into that family, that connection with the family was very strong. The connection with the community, when I came into our family, none of the daughter-in-laws were working outside the home. Whereas me, growing up, I was working outside the home. So the family was very close-knit, and close-knit with the community, with the Punjabi community, but not working outside the home. And so
Okay.
gradually that started changing. And
So was that change like with you? Like, since you started working, everybody followed your lead? Was
yeah,
it
there
like
were
that?
there were were different sister-in-laws as well who also started working around the same time. I mean, there's one sister-in-law who actually started working at the same time that I started working. But for me, I came in and I started volunteering because I needed to be doing things, and that's who I was. I mean, I remember in the earlier days, my mother-in-law would say, you know, because we would talk in English. Like my siblings came and visited me. We got married in April, and one of my siblings came in May, and then the other one came later. And my mother-in-law would say, you know, in English, right?
Yeah.
Why are you talking English? Why can't you talk Punjabi? And we could talk Punjabi, but that's what we talked. And so it was a culture shift for me. Like, it's Punjabi in the home. And to this day, I say, because I mean, I've got my Punjabi diploma. I went to school, I did university, and I got my diploma
Over here.
in England.
In England,
I used to teach Punjabi in England, but
Okay.
somebody to see me wouldn't think that she knows Punjabi.
Yeah.
When you ask the question of, you know, building the relationships with the community, I remember going to the Gurdwara the first time, and it's like, I'm not saying it's a judgmental environment, but society is judgmental. And I remember, you know, women from the community would say, we've had a lot of women who have come over from England, they get married here, and then they're this, they're that. Like, there was this image that was created of young women coming over and getting married, but coming with these reputations, and, you know, marriages breaking up and this and that. And I felt like I was being judged already, and I hadn't even stepped foot into the Gurdwara or the community of Punjabis. And then with time, the respect and the warmth and the love that came afterwards was, you know, it was insurmountable. It was awesome. And but that first feeling was, so how do I get in? And even in the family, my in-laws, the family was a very vocal, loud, prominent family in the community and at home, a very loud, sociable family. And for me, I was quiet. And to get that voice, I had to bring my voice in. And so coming in, it was like I'm an introvert, but then all of a sudden over the years, I'm an extrovert. And I do speak what I need, with respect. I respect my elders, but I speak. I won't shy away from a healthy debate, which sometimes can be difficult and challenging.
True.
And in our family unit, mom was the matriarch, which is not like when you speak to the dominant culture, they don't see that in Punjabis. They think it's the other way around. It's patriarch.
Yeah.
But yet in our family, it wasn't. It was matriarch. And you know, mom just passed away in 2015. But up to 2015, her adult kids who were in their 50s and 60s still respected her, were fearful of her, but with respect.
With respect.
So, i.e., a huge amount of respect. But as a community as a whole, I think even in because it was 88, it was still building. You were still seeing new people coming in, and you were forming and building those relationships.
And what have been the like the migration patterns for your family? Did they also move from England to Canada eventually, or this day?
Yeah. So my immediate family. So my sister had moved from England to Canada. Back in, must have been in late 70s, like just beginning of 80, like 79, 80. And then the rest of my family didn't come to Canada. They settled in England. They came from India to England. And they're in England still.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
Very nice. Very nice. So do you keep visiting England or India or?
Yeah. So I've been to India twice. I went once in 1996. And I just went in 2015 to take my mother-in-law's ashes back.
Okay.
And so I've only ever been to India twice, but it's neat that my kids were raised in a family unit where the grandparents were there, and they have learned so much about culture, tradition, the language, and my daughter actually had spent 3 months in India with grandma, and so, you know, one of the things that I take away from, I take a lot, but one of the main things I take away is our Punjabi culture with our elders. It is so invaluable. It is so valuable.
Very
So,
true.
yeah.
Very true. And do you want to share anything else? Just some experience or some memory which you kind of attribute was a challenge in your migration process, apart from the ones that you've already told us, or on a positive side maybe helped you settle in Canada better.
One of the things that I really appreciated for myself personally, and I can elaborate a little bit more on further things, is there's an organisation called Immigrant Multicultural Services Society in northern BC, and Bally Bassi at that time was the executive director, and when I came to Prince George, here I am, a young, vibrant woman who's energetic, who's wanting to do something in the community. And, I was at a workshop doing some certified court interpretation and so forth. And Baljit, started talking to me and saying, so, and it's so, typical, okay, so which family do you belong to? What's your band and this and that? And I knew all that. And then she goes, so where are you married into? Come and see me Monday morning in my office. And then she did sort of an informal interview type of thing. But my first job was as a settlement worker, so assisting and supporting individuals who are new to the country and settling in Prince George, which was
Very
amazing.
Nice. Yeah.
And from years on there, I did advocacy work and settlement work. And then in 1994, I started working at the Elizabeth Fry Society, and have been ever since, and now manage community social justice programs. And one of the things that I feel very strongly is how you can embrace you have Western culture and I say dominant culture, and how you embrace both cultures, and you've actually got a platform to educate both cultures on your experiences.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when we also have clients within our organization as well, it's like we don't want our clients to educate us because they're here to access services.
True.
But we as individuals need to be informed, and we need to be able to appreciate and recognize the many forms of different cultures and diversity that individuals bring. And so one of the things that we did in the north here in Prince George, which is a positive, is Kabaddi is an international sport
Yeah.
in India. And the Bassi family have played Kabaddi. They've done a lot of sports and international sports. And in Prince George, it was always male dominated. It was always men. And, my husband was involved in it, a lot of his friends and so forth. And women don't go to Kabaddi tournaments. They just didn't.
Yeah.
And here's me, I'm raising 3 kids, and they have soccer tournaments. They have soccer, volleyball, basketball. And as the mom, I'm always there. But then when it came to Kabaddi, and then my son started playing a little bit Kabaddi, but women don't go. And so over the years, what we did, we transformed the local Kabaddi tournaments to become family tournaments. And so you have women and children who come out, and we do games, and like couples are actually playing 3-legged races. They're playing egg and spoon races. And the community as a whole is getting involved. Like you've got the Punjabi community, and they're called our annual Punjabi Cultural Sports Tournament is what it's called, and we do it every year. And then we have the Western community who come out and actually see these international, local Punjabi games. And it's amazing, and it gives us a lot of pride because we do bag competitions, so turban competitions.
Okay.
We even do Junni competitions.
Very
It's different than Vancouver Kabaddi tournaments because I don't think there's women going there yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, in Williams Lake, in Kelowna, and in Prince George, we'll recognize that we do this tournament. And then we also have Vaisakhi. And Vaisakhi over the years has really transformed to getting bigger and bigger. We started off with 200 people, 500 people, and it's gone up to 3,000. And our Western community are asking us, what does Vaisakhi represent? What is the meaning of Vaisakhi? And we're able to bring in that religious aspect of Sikhism and the New Year, the birth of Sikhism, and then also the harvesting, the cultural aspect as well. And when we do our Vaisakhi, the exhibition parks are full of individuals who are wanting to share and celebrate Vaisakhi with us.
Very nice.
And then Diwali, where others would have spoken about Diwali as well.
Yeah.
And then we have dance festivals. I mean, Prince George, yes, it's in the north. It's also in the center, and there is a lot of diversity, and we have a lot of different events that we do. We do East meets West as well. And so I take a lot of pride living in northern BC, but still being able to be a Punjabi woman who's able to also share our knowledge, our history, our experiences with our friends and colleagues in our community.
Very nice, very nice. And another question I had was, how has been the relationship between and the relation of the Punjabi community over here and the Aboriginal people?
Okay.
In general.
In general, I think it's always ongoing building relationships. I mean, my experience was, and I had an experience because I was at so when we look at, who am I? And I do this, who am I? Am I Indo-Canadian? Am I South Asian? Am I Punjabi? Am I English? Am I Indian? Like am I East Indian? Who am I? And so these are labels that are formed in a collective society who are thinking, okay, who are you? And I was at an event and I was talking about the different names and labels and so forth. And a First Nations woman said, "You're not Indian. We are Indian." And that was my first exposure to actually understanding ancestors of Canada and First Nations communities and First Nations peoples. And when you hear the word Indian, I wasn't associating it with, Red Indian, West Indian, or East Indian, and or First Nations. And so I feel that the relationships with Aboriginal peoples, it's not as strong as it should be, and it needs to be. And what we do have, and what we hear a lot of times, is it's individual, like Punjabi, Aboriginal, Chinese, Filipino, and so there's pockets that are separate, but also we can embrace that if we share that. And when we look at the different cultures, and we look at First Nations cultures, and we look at Bannock, and then we look at Punjabi, what is Punjabi known for? Smose, or or whatever. There's the different things, and sometimes when I look at the holistic approaches and the spiritual learnings and so forth, there's so much to take from one another. And so I think it's an ongoing relationship building piece, and there's so much that each can give to the other.
Very true, very true.
Yeah.
Very nice. And do you have any personal artifacts or documents that you would like to share? That kind of, or maybe if you know any places of significance in this area or region that have historical significance.
Well, I was like for my own pieces, I always do. I was having a conversation with my husband there the other day, and I said, I remember when I came here, and the family were talking about when the first Gurdwara was built, and it was like, the comment in Punjabi, I can say, it was like ek ek et bana ke Gurdwara khada kita, right? Which translated in English is, we took one brick at a time and we built this Gurdwara. And to me, that's priceless. Like, just hearing how it was manual labor that Punjabi men came together to build that Gurdwara. And and so there's things like that. I mean, when I look at my father-in-law and my mother-in-law, and I look at their pieces that they have some artifacts, like what I would say is like a stopwatch, like that they had bought from India when they came from India, their first passports and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that I had started sort of gathering together and just putting to one side to say, this is history. This is their, they're not here, but if that's something that we want to share or take photos of, we could ask the family and we could do that. And I was speaking to someone else yesterday as well, because in India we have tiffins, right? Where you carry the lunch in these lunch boxes.
Yes, small containers.
Small containers.
Yeah.
And I have a tiffin, and I used it the other day
nice.
for my son, because they just moved after their wedding, and I took a tiffin out with parathe and everything, and it was like, this reminds us of India, and I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's those things, it's those homey things that you have. Also, when I first came, there was an area in Prince George which was considered mini India. So that was like Peden Hill is now, sorry. It was like Kearney, Quince, Diefenbaker, and I think Brahmji Bagri might have talked about that as well. I was speaking to a woman yesterday, she said, yeah, when so-and-so came, the first house was over there.
Yes, she mentioned, she mentioned.
Yeah, and then now you fast forward into 2017, you've got a different area that's like mini India, which is now Peden Hill. You have this Andres, it's a street, and it's all Punjabis on that street. So my motto has always been, because in the neighborhood that I live in, I have my sister-in-law who lives next door, but apart from that, we have no Punjabis on our street. But for me, the going thing is, because we make dahi, yogurt, at home. So I'm always like, if you need jog, you need a Punjabi person living next door, because if you run out, you can go out and get it. And so that's always been my thing. It's neat to have, neighbors of diversity as well, but also Punjabi neighbors as well. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. You took out your time and shared your personal history of being in Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you.